Now, let's get some expert analysis on this expanding war within Pakistan. And for that, we turn to Alex Thier of the United States Institute of Peace, an independent, nonpartisan institution funded by Congress. Thank you for being with us. Tell us why today's suicide bombing represents a meaningful development, particularly in light of the fact that it took place in Lahore.
This recent bombing is one of a series of attacks that militants within Pakistan have carried out outside of the area where the conflict is mostly. Most of the militants and the conflict against the militants is in the western part of Pakistan, on the border region with Afghanistan, in those tribal areas. But the militants who are now under attack from the Pakistani army are lashing out in other parts of the country. This bombing in Lahore is the third major incident that's taken place in Lahore in the last few months. The reason that they're targeting that city is that Lahore is the capital of Punjab province, and Punjab province is the home to the largest portion of the Pakistani population. It's where most of the soldiers from the Pakistani military come from, and where most of Pakistan's preeminent politicians come from.
I believe that you've said that Pakistan's already in the midst of civil war. Explain how you come to that conclusion.
Well, I think that the operations over the last year in Pakistan, and particularly over the last few months, are large-scale military operations by the Pakistani military, largely against Pakistani groups. Although these groups are often supported by foreign entities, part of al-Qaeda and other Islamist militant groups from other countries, the basis for these groups are now citizens of Pakistan. And so this is clearly a war by Pakistan's military and security forces against Pakistani groups. And a large enough people have been killed on both sides that I think by most common definitions, this is now a civil war.
If Pakistanis believe that terror attacks like today's are retaliation for their war against the Taliban, what is that going to mean for public support of the government offensive?
Previously, people often did think that these attacks were retaliation and that the solution was to stop the military offensive. But now I think the population is rightly coming to the conclusion that the attacks by the militants are a much broader plan to destabilize Pakistani state and society. And I think that the Pakistani population is starting to not be deterred by these attacks and to think that the government needs to go further to address this problem.
Alex Thier, thanks very much for joining us tonight.
My pleasure.